How's that?
It's good.
Okay, good.
So how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. How are you?
How do you feel about feeling that way?
I wanted to ask you. I actually thought maybe we would sort of go backwards because you just played the Rhodes, and I was so intrigued. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about a Rhodes piano, because I myself don't know very much, and I thought maybe the audience might like to know as well.
Okay.
We can even stand up if you like.
Yeah, but you can't see it anymore.
This is true. But everybody still has it in their mind, kind of? Forever, exactly.
So a Rhodes piano essentially is a mechanical piano that plays a tuning fork-like structure, which is right here. And that's how it works. A hammer comes up and hits the tuning fork. And the mechanism of it is, kind of what I do with it is amplify all the stuff that isn't supposed to be loud. Okay. So, I can play those big Rhodesy sounds and bow them in and stuff with that mixer. And I can get some of the regular sound of the Rhodes that way. But for the most part, a lot of the percussive stuff and everything is all coming from the amplified hammers and the amplified like setting rocks on here. I'm amplifying the sound of the rocks hitting the resonator part of the tine part of the tuning fork while the when the hammer comes up and hits it and makes it vibrate. Does that make sense?
You had the little electric or little battery operated doohickey right here. That was
a hex bug.
A hex bug. I knew we have some of those in the store, I think. And then what about this part? I was kind of intrigued by that too.
That's just a little. It's just rods that I can bow.
Okay.
So there are contact mics on a lot of this. Basically the way that I amplify the sounds is just by putting a bunch of contact mics in this.
Okay.
So it has pickups still the way a regular Rhodes would, but they're split into more. They're 3 instead of 1, and then all the rest is a bunch of contact mics inside the thing. So
what I liked about this was it really lived up to the subtitle of the show, Resonance, Undiscovered Sounds and Music. For me, this was very exciting. And then could you tell us a little bit about, because the other thing I heard all kinds of things. I don't know what you guys heard, but I heard a pinball machine, kids running around in an apartment above you. I heard wind going through the room, or breath, or waves, or there was all kinds of sounds happening. So what were you playing directly, and then what was being played?
So when I'm playing, I'm routing these individual. This is going to get real techie, maybe not that interesting, but I'm taking the 8 sound sources that I have, and I'm routing them through this mixing board into a bunch of electronics. Okay, and for this show, I have this 3 loop stereo looper. It'll do 3 different stereo loops. And so we set it up so that we had 3 independent loops moving through the room in different directions while I'm playing over top of that.
Okay.
And so the challenge for me is to continue to make the piece kind of move along while I'm thinking all this tech stuff. Like, oh, that's routed over here, and if I do that, then it's going to amplify this, and I don't want to do that. And it's just like, if you could hear my stream of consciousness, it wouldn't be that interesting, probably. You'd be like, wow,
it probably would,
wonky.
Yeah. So, and then you were improvising over the program sounds, or was that
No,
that
I was entering them into the looper while I was playing.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I was really fascinating.
Basically, do you know anything about modular synthesis?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so in a way, this is kind of like that. The way that I think about it. I do modular synthesis too. Mm-hmm. So when you're thinking about where all these wires are going, you're patching these things. Well, you're making this thing. This is going to go here, and then it's going to go through this and turn into this, and that's what I'm doing there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was really cool. Have you been playing the Rhodes for a really long time? Is it an instrument that you're just really fascinated with, or in love with, or have some long?
The first keyboard that I ever had was a Rhodes. And then at one point, I was trying to think about this. At one point, someone gave me one that had fallen off the back of a truck. And I had it on my kitchen table. Actually, the one that's in our car right now is our camping thing. And you know, it's sitting there, and the frame is all broken off, so it looks like this. And so, you know,
Is that
spent
how
a fair amount of time thinking about it. And then, you know, at some point I was like, well, I should play prepared Rhodes, and I had a big Rhodes like this, and played that for a while, just with one output. And then I started thinking, well, how could I make this more complex? How could I make this, you know, how could I use the electronics of this and really make it into some kind of more like a modular synthesizer? So, yeah, but it still is organic. It's still a sound that's coming from a microphone. It's not coming from, it's a sound that's made. It's not like electronic, if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, that does. It looks like you might have modified the legs as well.
Oh yeah, so this one is cut down
Right.
by a lot. So yeah, and that was the sort of that was the momentary solution for how to put it into a box and carry it around
to travel with it.
Not buy the parts from Rhodes.
Gotcha.
But also it makes me look like a pipe bomber. So
yeah,
that's really
it's very
entertaining for
Explo looking.
TSA.
I really like that. Can you tell us a little bit about also just the sort of tradition of prepared piano? Because again, something I don't know I know a little bit, but not too much, and I thought that might be interesting to talk about.
Well, people have been putting things into pianos to make them sound different for a long time. If you look at the Wikipedia thing, you'll see that there was, what is it? It's Mozart's Turkish March. They sold pianos that had like a snare attachment that would come up and play a snare when you played a certain note. Anyway, then John Cage got this idea that he would develop that idea and, you know, started putting things into pianos and being really precise about what he was doing. So figuring out all the harmonics of where screws are and things like that, and making all these beautiful kind of gamelan sounding things. And then since, you know, I mean, Cage is like doing this in the 40s, and, you know, by the 60s and 70s, people are doing it with all kinds of instruments and guitars and all kinds of things. And so it's really a whole kind of tradition in itself now.
What is the weirdest sound and weirdest thing you've ever prepared a piano with? Or maybe the one that you loved the most or something.
Man.
I mean, this guy's pretty great. I'm not saying he's not.
Yeah, well, the frog is a keeper for sure. The frog holds my pencils. And while I teach, and giving you a nice segue here if you want to ask about that. And the frog does this. The frog will clap for people.
Ah,
good job!
That's a Fran move right there,
go.
yeah.
Hey, good job! If you're having a bad practice session, yeah, and hold the pencils. And then for recitals, I take the frog and often put it in the same place that it is. I figure it's like a comfort icon. I don't know, the weirdest thing.
Or something you really loved, maybe like a sound that, you know, was just really...
I mean, I'm going to be boring and say that, you know, what happens is sometimes I forget my preparations. So I get to a show and I don't have my preparations. I'm like, what will I do? Oh, of course, I know what I'll do. I'll just start walking around and looking for things that I can stick into the whatever it is that I'm preparing. And that's how I found those quartz stones in New Mexico, and they're the things that were rattling against it, and that's one of my favorite things, honestly. I don't know, the weirdest thing is a hard one.
That's a hard one, okay. Well, how about maybe talking a little bit about your teaching, since you just mentioned that. I found out from one of our wonderful staff here, actually, whose children are students of Eric's, that Eric's also a music teacher. So I was kind of thinking about that while I was watching you perform, and I was wondering about how much traditional, you know, like how you start with a student, whether it's a child or an adult, and then do you, like getting into teaching improvising and working with students that way. I was kind of curious about how you do that.
What I try to do with teaching is twofold. One, the first thing I do is is think that I'm going to do no harm. And the second thing that I'm going to do is try to find what the kid wants, what makes them light up. The thing that makes them, that they go, what's that? And then you can get in that way to the weird stuff.
How do you discover that with any given student?
You just
play around with stuff?
Yeah, you just fool around with stuff. I teach reading. I teach piano lessons to like, what do I have, like 27 students or something. And you know, you teach the reading, and then when you get past that, then you could do other cool stuff. So, yeah. And you say, you know, what if there was a piece, but it was completely silent? What if we just sat, and then I had one student a couple weeks ago who got really interested in John Cage's 433, which is the silent piece where you just put the score in front of you and you turn the pages and sit for 433. And he came in the next week. I told him about it, and he came in the next week. He said, I found this YouTube video of this heavy metal guy doing that 433 piece, and he goes, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then he just sits there for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. So I don't know. I like to see how to get them to think about things in a different way.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about while you were playing the ensemble pieces that I really liked was there was a lot of space in those pieces. A lot of, and I don't know if it was this room too, but for some reason every single sound seemed very, sharp and clear, and it was like kind of a wonderful to be listening to each, between each instrument and the conversation, but there was these nice spaces.
I think the rests are as important as the music, if not more.
It really helps you appreciate what's going on, I think, and so if you can take that moment.
It's just like if someone talks a lot, and someone who doesn't talk a lot, you really listen to them when they talk to you.
Right.
Because they've been working on it for a while.
Well, following on that thought, then then I was thinking about how with the Snail piece and the Snail scores, I'm just so curious about how that whole process came together. First of all, because as you started playing that piece, I was thinking, have I ever thought about whether snails make sound at all? They seem like the most silent creature, but of course they do. Yeah, of course.
They make a lot of sound. They have a mouth that's on the bottom of their foot, right? Which is what they slide around on. So that was one of the interesting things about making some of the scores, because if I gave them certain kinds of paper, you could hear them kind of munching on the paper.
Chew right through.
Very, very quiet. Oh yeah, they chewed through a lot of paper. It's pretty interesting that they would eat it's like I never thought about eating the score when I'm playing it. Maybe I should think about that.
So what was your initial fascination with snails? Was it just something in nature that you had enjoyed and been curious about?
I think that what got me started on this, although it's been a while, was just walking in Berkeley and the environs, and you often see snail trails. Just if you're looking really closely, I'm always looking for patterns. Music's just patterns. So I'm always looking for patterns that are interesting, and I just started to get really interested in the snail trail patterns that were left. And they're new ones all the time because they come out at night and wander around, and when it rains they come out. Don't see them as much then. Anyway, then my mother had a garden, and she hates snails. So she would poison them with, she's 93. She would poison them with the worst snail bait, just like. And so I rescued these snails from her. I was like, I'm going to save these. I'll just take these home with me, okay? And she's like, oh yeah, get rid of them. And so I took them home and put them in a little terrarium, and it kind of started from that. So, I don't know.
And then when I was kind of trying to imagine when you set them down on the paper for creating the trails on the paper, have you got a whole bunch of them? Are they?
Sometimes a few.
And do they, because I notice with snail trails, you often see them crossing a lot, these kind of weird meander.
They're hermaphrodites.
Right.
So they can go all ways.
Ah, so they
Yeah.
can do anything, right? That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, so they're looking for each other, I guess. I don't know, but once I did have a bunch of eggs. Once I had some, successfully mate in the terrarium and like have tons of eggs, and it's like little tiny caviar-looking white things. So wrote a bunch of scores about that. Made little drawings and then had the snails crawl around on those.
That's so. So then, how did you go from the sort of watching their patterns and thinking about music, like to the actual composition? Like, were you thinking about? I guess what I was wondering was, were you thinking about like, sounds that you think are like a snail, or was it more trying to just find the right sound? Do you know what I'm asking there?
I don't know. I think it's sort of like a meditation on the consciousness of another being.
Right.
You can't really comprehend it. You can imagine it, but you can't really get in there. And actually, I mean, this is the most interesting thing about like making scores with animals is thinking about how to put patterns that aren't human into things that are human and see what happens, because I don't think we pay enough attention to those patterns. We're quickly destroying a lot of the animal life on the planet, so.
Right.
Yeah.
That I love the whole idea, and I love that I noticed in the program notes that you were talking specifically about the common garden snail and how it's not native to California. That was something I didn't know. So.
Yeah, I mean, most people think they're a pest. They're like eucalyptus, right? Everyone loves it but hates it, I guess.
And then for the quartet pieces, I was also wondering, another thing that always fascinates me is this idea of when you're composing, are you hearing, each instrument individually? Are you hearing them talking to each other as you're composing? Like, how does that come together?
No, I'm trying to create music that is not repeatable, that's created by the people who are in the room, as well as the composer. It's a revisioning of what a composer is. The composer isn't the one that dictates how everything is supposed to be, but it's someone who creates a template that you can work inside of. It's a more democratic system, I think.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what what I was really enjoying about listening to the pieces was how each performer's personality came out, and each sound had a very distinct personality. Like, it was a wonderful
Yeah, and then
combo.
they can do the things that they're good at.
Right.
They can come with their favorite pet sounds and put them into the mix and make it. So I'm like making a space that they can be inside of, the performers, I guess.
Yeah. Great. Well, does anyone have any questions for Eric in the audience? I think we have a microphone over here. There's Fran. Yep.
For the percussion instruments that the one young lady was playing, were any of those handmade, or there you are? Were those handmade or those purchased, or where did you get your ideas for how you played each one?
Well, those instruments are passing the microphone. The instruments I had on the table, most of them are actually purchased. Sorry, what was your question? How I made some. Well, I did explore a lot with instruments, and then when I if I scratch like this, what kind of sound it'll make and everything. And so I just spent a lot of time with my instruments and just played around, and it made sounds, and yeah.
Yeah, you just have to love sound to be in this kind of music, because it's like you go around, scratching and poking at things to see how they resonate, and test everything that you see. How's this chair? Not so great, but it's a passion. I think.
Any other questions out there tonight? Hey, we have one right here.
So, were you using this room, kind of the Meyer sound system? Did you have different outputs going to different sets of speakers?
Yes. Yes. So there were 3 different loops going out into there were 3 different loops independently moving around the room. Mm-hmm. And then there was the main mix that was up here, which was like my immediate stuff that I wasn't sending out to the loops. Yeah.
Did you also use the room for the quartet?
The only way that the room was used was the way that Nicole was talking about it before the show started, and that's
the long reverb.
There's like an artificial reverb thing they have, which is really fun. What's it called? Long voice.
That's
or something?
the longest reverb set. Yeah, we call it the cathedral setting. Is the longest one. There's several. There we go.
There
You can hear it.
Hello.
There you go. So you can hear it there. Thanks, Andy.
So to do that just now, was the whole room set to longest reverb?
That's right. So there's, I think, 4, is that right? 3 or 4 settings, 4, Wayne? Or 6? 6 different settings of length, so you can play around with it. The room is designed for that, yeah. Here at the Exploratorium? Oh, we can set you up. Just come talk to me afterwards. Do we have another question back there? Okay. Let's take one more in the back there.
So you expressed your love for nature and communicating with your music. I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more about what you meant by that, because personally I've experienced some kind of closeness to animals. Don't knock me, San Francisco. Walking through the park and analyzing the snails while under the influence of psilocybin. I was just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more about how you came to wanting to explore a little bit with these snails and follow them.
You never have to worry about being judged here. Let's just
Okay,
say.
Not in San Francisco.
I knew this was a safe place.
Yeah.
I think the real question is how have substances affected your composing ability, and have they at all or not? Because I'm curious.
Let me answer the first question first. I got to the idea that the idea to work with animals comes from a partly a need just to improve the world, and as an artist feeling that I have a commitment to having voices that aren't heard be heard. And the snails, they're here all the time. Everyone sees them and steps on them, and no one listens to them, and guess what? We are in trouble as the human species, and we need to start listening to everybody, because those animal people have, and I eat meat and all that. I'm not a saint as far as that goes, but I think that like the whole ecosystem needs to be listened to. We need to listen to the plants. We need to listen to the animals. Now, as far as whether drugs are involved in that music, no, but that doesn't mean that I haven't had experience with drugs. But that music is profoundly not about drugs for me. It's like the altered state of attention and like meditating and sitting with the snails and thinking deeply about stuff, So, yeah.
We had Bernie Krause here last year, and he talked a little bit about that too, about how the sounds are changing, and he's been recording nature. He calls himself a bioacoustician,
Right.
So he records a lot of sounds, and he talked about how the sounds are literally disappearing and changing. It was very powerful.
Yeah, there's a sound environment just as there is every other kind of environment, and it changes as we dominate the planet with whatever it is we're dominating it with.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's next for you, Eric? Have you got other concerts coming up, things going on?
I'm doing a show at Garden of Memory in, when is that? 6/21.
The solstice.
Yes. So that if you don't know about that show, it's held at this, some might find it creepy, columbarium, where all the people's ashes are in the walls, but it's really a beautiful Julia Morgan designed space that's kind of labyrinthine, and you get to, there are maybe 75 to 100 musicians performing all over the place, and they're in everything from little tiny rooms, you know, almost by themselves, and there are installations in some of those rooms, and then there are ensembles playing in different places, and the sounds, you know, are going all through this giant space, and you're walking through it, and everywhere you go, you turn your head and you hear some other thing you've never imagined. So I'm doing some pieces there with my friend Wayne Grimm, and you know, some ensemble pieces, more knitting stuff, because there are 21 of those pieces, and some other stuff like that.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank
We
you for having
really
me. It's
appreciate
a real honor
you
to
coming.
be at the Exploratorium.
On the Chapel of the Chimes event, unfortunately that's not an Exploratorium event, but it is called Chapel of the Chimes. I believe the event is Garden of Memory.
It's Garden of Memory.
Yeah. So you can find it. It's in Oakland, I think, right?
Is it
Berkeley?
gardenofmemory.org? I think it is. I think it's gardenofmemory.org.
Oh, one more question here. Yes,
Oh.
sorry. I was just about to get to that. I was going to say a couple thank yous. But yes, Eric has some wonderful CDs here. They're down on the stage if you'd like to come and take a look. Please feel free to talk to Eric after, if he's willing. And I'm not sure what time it is. I'm just looking. Oops, what time is it? 9:07. Okay, thank you. So we have about 50 minutes left in the museum as well, so please make sure you get out on the museum floor if you'd like. I just wanted to say thank you this is our third season of Resonance. We've done 4 programs this year, and they were all really wonderful. I wanted to thank our public program staff and our Moving Images staff who've done a wonderful job supporting the programs. I want to especially call out Wayne Grimm, who's our curator. He's sitting over there quietly and put together a wonderful program. I'd also like to thank Francesca D'Alessio, who is our program manager and fantastic, and our director of public programs, Melissa Alexander, who's sitting right down here. We will be back next year, and like I said, please put your name on the mailing list. It's just a name and email. We'll keep you updated on sound and music programs that we're doing here. And we really appreciate you coming. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.